Thank you, Zoom. Hi, everybody. This is Oakwalker. I'm with Stronghorse, my good friend, and we are Earth Medicine for the Soul. We're here to do another episode um, based on basically a lot of our spiritual teachings and the life we've led up to now. And I want to just pass this right on straight over to Frank today because he's got a ton of ideas and he's doing way better than I am in this particular subject. So here we go.
Yeah, well, actually, you're Oakwalker. You're don't short sell yourself. You're the one that opened this thing up, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but you used the word proforma, and I think we were talking about authenticity,
Yeah,
and you
and
said
it was
something about like
performative. Yeah.
performative, yeah, and you said, well, if it's you know, you're either authentic or you're performing, and it just, oh man, for about a week, I just had one epiphany after another, and it's amazing. It just really opened up. I explained a whole lot of stuff for me. And so, as we were talking about before we started, I want to delve into this, and I kind of want to delve into it through recapitulation. In a shamanic journey, your recapitulation is a vital aspect of your path because you need to be able to go back and with a very honest and sincere heart, look at your past and sort of acknowledge to yourself the things that have been robbing you of energy, which is generally usually something negative
Mhm.
or something, that is just, and
Yep.
if
Keeping
you
you
acknowledge it,
blind.
it tends to like, yeah, it tends to go. I mean, it'll leave. If you acknowledge it and say, all right, and address it in an honest way, you've learned the lesson, I mean, so
Yeah.
it's a whole karma dharma trip, and when you brought up the performative, and I started thinking about it, and I thought, God, I am definitely not anything of that, you know. And then I started thinking about it, and it was like, oh man, my whole life has really been about this, and the thing about authenticity is I think that's something you're kind of born with, I mean, that a lot of times in athletic situations they'll talk about something and they'll say, that's a move that guy made that you can't train, man. That's something you're born with, and it's like a talent, more or less.
Mhm.
And I think authenticity to some degree is that. And so what happens when we're confronted with performative, it's like we just sort of spin out and we can't relate to it and we don't know how to respond. So let me give you some short examples of my life that I
Okay.
realized through recapitulation. So um, my mother lost her first child, who was a boy, a few days after birth, and so through my whole life, I felt like I keep feeling like I'm in some sort of competitive thing with this, first son that never really materialized, and I don't understand why. And then, I started realizing that through the performative aspect, I started realizing there was an expectation of me to perform in a certain way
Mm.
that I can never live up to.
Right.
It was impossible. I didn't even know what it was, and so I was constantly in this battle that had no parameters, no definitions, nothing. And so it was crazy making. And then, like, to really accentuate this, when I was like, I don't know, I think maybe sixth, seventh, eighth grade or something like that, I was really coming into myself, and I was really developing my leadership skills and my self confidence. And I was like president of the class and captain of the football team. And it was just really kind of growing into like, man, this life is great. I think I can probably do this. And I came home from school one day and and the family, who is not me, but the rest of the people there, they announced that they'd all gotten together, gone out and found a house, and they were going to buy it, and we were all going to move. And I was like, really? What's that mean? You guys went out without me, and you chose a house, and so now we're going to move. And it was just like, well, that's pretty weird in and of itself. But it was in another part of town that was more upscale. And so when I came into the school, there was a certain level of performance that I was expected to demonstrate.
Yeah.
And it was sort of, and it was in a strata, there's an alignment with how these, the imaging army and the sculpting of all these other kids uh, through their wealth, situations. And I
Uh-huh.
and I was just flabbergasted. I mean, I was like, I don't even understand this. I don't even like it. And it was just horrible. I mean, it was 4 years of just being absolutely isolated and, and that's the dark side. The light side, of course, is it threw me into a place of needing to discover how insane is this,
Uh-huh.
and why is it insane? And that's
Yeah.
what got me on a spiritual path, and
Eventually.
yeah, and so I think it was like I knew authenticity was out there because that's exactly what I am. I mean, I just am, and you don't have to like it, you don't have to understand it, but it's always been, that's it for me, man. And I can't be any other way than this. And it's always, even in the deer tribe, it created a conflict there, like you were talking about earlier about all the judgments and the comparisons of
Hmm.
you as a mesa carrier. I had the same thing, but mine was because I would not perform in the way everybody else in the tribe was.
Hmm.
I just, they were all like, I mean, it was very oriented towards promoting the leader and how great he was and this and that. And I was like, I just don't get that. I just don't. And it wasn't that I was opposed to it because I had huge respect for the guy.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
just that, I didn't feel like molding myself into this group mentality because
Hmm.
I felt I was giving something up, and that the thing that they were asking me to give up was too valuable. And I didn't know it at the time, but now looking back on it through my recapitulation, it was authenticity. I didn't want to give that up,
Hmm.
and so it was huge value. So instead of getting long-winded about this, let me flip it back to you. I mean, do you have similar kind of experiences?
Well, that's amazing. Yes, but I was never graced with that period of time in my schooling and my upbringing where I developed any level of confidence at all. So, I'm still, you know, those patterns die hard, and
Right,
I'm still fighting that a little bit. Um, but I did have that experience of moving into a school from my middle school, which was sort of a middle class place, into my high school, which was a very, much more of an upper class place. And I didn't have the status, we didn't have the income. My father didn't have the right job.
right,
We didn't have that level of status. I call it the yacht club status. Um,
right.
that a lot of the other kids there had. So I do share that with you. But this is where we differ because in my upbringing, I never got to a level of authenticity until I started doing the shadow work. And for me, the authenticity had to become a learned skill. My parents taught me how to lie by punishing me when I told the truth. Um, my social structure in high school taught me that I was just basically bad. They didn't have, for example, ADHD diagnoses when I was a kid. So they sent me to the shrink and they just said, well, he's no good. And so I was a bad kid for the rest of, the rest of
Start
my
performing, kid.
life. Right. And it wasn't until I started really doing that internal what was the word you just used? Recapitulation, which is a
Yeah,
process of going back and looking at yourself and going, well, that is not the authentic me. I have to let go of that, and I've got to let go of this and this and this. And it happened through ceremonies with plant medicine. It happened through counseling. It happened through role modeling quite a lot of the people who are in my circles and who were able to give me honor, give me respect, even though I never felt like I deserved it. And those kind of experiences are what brought me to a level of having the confidence that my authentic self is something that's a valid thing, right? And I still see a lot of people, they should be old enough to know better. And they're still going around going, how do you like my style? you know, and
right, right.
that's the performative part where they're all out there still, at the age of 55 and stuff, going, oh, this is how you be in the world. But it's not real. It's all a big.
No,
They might as well be a
it's a
meat
big,
puppet.
it's a big put on, and here's a real here's when this is where I was literally left at the table with my jaw hanging open. I was in a situation where I was suing these people because they'd screwed me out of a ton of money. And so we had to do a deposition, and I'd never done a deposition. But anyway, these two attorneys show up, and we go in this conference room, and they start off and they're going after each other, and you can't ask my question, that's questions, and they're very very confronted, which I figured would be in a deposition. And they
uh,
were asking me questions and I was trying to answer them, and then I objected to that and this and that, and anyway it went on and on, and then at the end they one attorney goes over and says, "We done?" Yeah, and he flicks off the recorder and he looks at the other attorney and says, "You want to get a drink?" And the other attorney said, "Sure." He says, "Well, I got a bottle of bourbon in my office, and that'd be great." And they get up and like almost hold hands walking out, and I'm sitting there going, "Jesus Christ, what happened?" Yeah, they were totally performing, and I was like, I was buying into it.
right?
I was, yeah, this is exactly how it'd be. You tell them, and then it was over there like, okay, let's go have a drink. And it just left me stunned, and I thought, oh my God, am I that naive
Oh yeah.
that, that I thought, and I am,
Uh-huh.
and it's really, that's my point. The level of performative addiction in this society is so widespread and so deep that, if you are someone who values authenticity, I mean, you're literally kind of stuck in a one flew over the cuckoo's nest, man.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
you really are. You're like, you all are crazy, don't you? You're completely off, and they're looking at us thinking, no, you're the nut.
Uh-huh.
And
Because you don't
you you know,
conform.
because you don't conform. You're supposed to be performing, and if you're not performing the right way, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And and then you get cast with guilt, blame, and shame, and and they're
Yeah.
and 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 they're like, yeah, he's that's the way he's just really not right, and then so what happens, I realize too, is that the reason we were drawn to a shamanic path, I think, was because it's the world of knowing.
Yeah.
And once we got into that, I mean, we didn't realize, I do now, like I said, through recapitulation, I realize
Uh-huh.
now because in the world of knowing, authenticity is the key.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah. If you can't, gosh, I was just telling the boys this is about um, 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 that in order for you to have, yeah, in order for you to have integrity, you've got to have this the self-awareness of knowing when you're lying. You got to know you're lying. And that's a thing that people don't always know. Their patterns are so automatically manipulative.
Exactly.
And and I was this way when I was until I was, I don't know, maybe 27, and then I started kind of working out of it. But my real epiphany didn't happen until I was 40. Okay, I had a lot of time. That's a lot of years to fuck up.
Right.
I got a lot of balancing out to do still. And if you can't come to the self-awareness and the authentic sense of, look, I hear what you're saying that you think I did, but I am aware of what I did and I know why I did it. And this is the reason I had for doing it. Now, maybe it wasn't a very good reason, but this is what I was thinking. I thought this and this and this in the here and now. And that means that right or wrong, at least I was thinking about it, you know? This came from a place of self-reflection and self-awareness. And that takes a while for people to learn sometimes, especially when they come from environments that are strictly performative, you know?
Yeah, but you're talking about becoming the observer of the self, and
Yes.
again, you're talking about the shadow work, and
Yep.
people don't want to do that because they want to see themselves like this, because they know it's not right. I mean, I remember when I was driving my cab in Austin, the hands down, 100% of the people that got in my cab they had the worst energy and they're most bummed out were lawyers. 100% of them. I'd say, well, what do you do for work? Yeah, I'm a lawyer. And I mean, they hated themselves. And here's the thing, what's interesting. I don't know what the percentage is, but something like 80% of the people in government are lawyers,
Yeah.
all in Congress and in all. So they're all doing performance. It's all political theater. And
Hmm.
most people are thinking, no, this is really real. This is, this is these are our people. They're authentic. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're performing for a
Yep.
paycheck. That's all
Yeah.
they're doing. And they
Or
know
for an
it.
office,
They
the
know it.
principles that don't exist, but they're spouting this stuff like they're, standing up for something when it's got nothing to do with that.
Yeah. It's just it's but they're when you're in a world that is performative and everybody's like on board with it, there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with it. There's
Right.
there's nothing wrong
Right.
with it.
Right. The authentic people are the crazies.
Yeah, the people are saying, wait a minute, this does if you're authentic, you're really cast out into your own lifeboat, really, I
Yeah.
mean, you really are. And
It's
and
like a social hermitage.
so yeah, but the flip side of that, of course, is that it's like you have an incredible other world that opens up and embraces you. It's like,
Hmm.
I was thinking today, like, no, nobody, it's not a performative world because nobody's going to go up to an oak tree and go, look, you don't seem to understand. You're a pecan tree.
Right.
Start making nuts. You know, the, the, the oak tree's like, oh, wow, dude, what is up with you? You
Right.
know, I mean, it's just so it's, we go to the trees and sit with them and just that authenticity that is them becomes healing.
Yes. And it's impossible if you don't know where you're coming from. You can't interact with the universe in a real way until you've got that level of, um, until you're not trying to pretend like you're something else.
Right. Because they don't want anything to do with you. There's nothing to
Yeah.
talk about.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
everybody's running around going, how come God doesn't show himself? Because you're on the wrong channel, dude.
Right.
You're not,
Did you ever think of listening?
God doesn't perform. God isn't theater. God is
Right.
real. It's just, he doesn't have to pretend. It is what it is whenever it is the way it wants to be.
Right.
And, you can't understand it unless you have accepted your authenticity and relished in it, and
Yeah.
embraced it and valued it probably more than anything else, if you value it, that's the key that unlocks access to consciousness,
I
I
agree.
think.
Yeah, I agree. And that all
You
runs
know,
back. So, one of my favorite books, A Course in Miracles, we talk about it all the time. And the first sentence in it is nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal exists. Right? So you're either real or you don't exist. Right? And then that's really the premise of the entire book. It's this thick, and it just keeps going, dude, you are not superior to your creator. You know, here, this is what an ego does. This is what it looks like when you're performative, right? An ego is a kind of
right.
a performative entity. It thinks it knows stuff,
Absolutely.
and all it knows is the
Absolutely.
stories it's been told since it was born, and it was born about that when you were about 2 years old.
But I mean, I think you'd also agree, though, that you know, because we've been involved in enough situations where we have taken entities that are in the dark and brought them into the light.
Yeah,
The ego can be brought into the light. You can bring the ego into and embrace its authenticity and its knowing and the power that it represents, and use
yes,
that in a manner that is creative within the creation of the universe.
I
And
agree with
so
that.
so ego doesn't become a bad thing. I mean, it is a bad thing for most everybody because everybody's outperforming, you know,
Yeah, but
and they
it's
don't know
necessary
they're,
to interact with the real world, you
huh?
know? It's necessary to interact with the real world
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the
I mean,
performative world. It's a good go-between.
but there's a difference between putting a mask on
Yeah,
and going out and interacting with the world and going out and not knowing you have the mask on
yeah.
and just being constantly caught up in the way things and struggling to try to perform in a way that everybody else expects you to because you want to get paid. You know,
Yeah, that
you
is a
need
big
a
part of it,
check.
right?
Oh, it's huge.
And
It's
I
huge.
still struggle with this, because I need to get paid, right? And so I am authentic at work, and I don't lie, and I don't, feed people a load of bullshit, but I still, I'm not out there going, well, that's stupid, you know, which is sometimes what I'm thinking I want to say. And so there's,
Right.
I have to draw it in a little bit, tiny bit to be social enough to keep a job, for example. And there's a little bit of give and take in that border between me and the world, between the
Well,
authentic
I
me
think
and
that the hardest thing that I've had to learn is to just allow people to be who they are, and, and, and
yeah,
not try to, not try to step in and change or confront or, I mean, if
repair.
a person wants to ask me questions, I'll be happy to share with you, but the art, there's no relationship that I know of that is successful that hasn't learned the art of compromise. Honey, that's a great idea. Why don't we do that? I can't believe I didn't think of that. You
Hmm.
know, and so, the performance goes on, but I protect my authenticity. Oh, man, I just really do. I mean, I hold it as probably the most valuable thing that I have.
It is. It's very, very, very important to me too, because I can't deal with the universe any other way. I can't hear. I can't see and I can't hear without it. Simple as that. And sense. I can't sense. I can't feel. Oh,
And all of that is hugely important, I mean,
yeah.
hugely important. I mean, you create a different value system, and the values take on a whole different tenor, in authenticity, and when the way the universe functions becomes and what the natural world's doing, it
Hmm.
becomes a whole different set of parameters. and priorities, and therefore you make decisions that are radically different from those that are people that are performing, because the people that are performing are really making decisions based on what others expect of them. Because there's no need to perform if you're letting go of what how other people see you. And
Uh-huh.
I mean that's I mean that I mean, I don't know when I arrived at that. It must have been a long time ago.
You've gotten pretty good at it.
Got that down. I remember I remember one time somebody came up to me and they said at the deer trial, they says, people around here just feel like you're not approachable. I said, well, yeah, I can see that. But that's when but I'm not, I am approachable. I am very, very open, but I'm protecting my authenticity. I'm
Hmm.
not, if people come up to me and expect me to perform in a certain way,
That's
it's
not
just
going to
not going
happen.
anywhere.
Yeah, me
No,
too.
it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And so
Yeah,
it
not going to be
throws
your,
people off.
mhm. Not going to be your monkey. We got to
No,
go.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, um, well, I think this is a huge piece, man, and we could probably expand on a little bit more in the next session, and because I
Yeah,
think I
I
think
we talked about the
recapitulation is
natural, uh-huh, and recapitulation. I'm writing this down. I can't spell recapitulation. That's gonna
RECA recap. Just put
recap.
recap on there.
Yep.
Recap.
So anyway,
Yeah.
we're out of time, and I do want to take this up in the next session. So let's break it off here, and I will tell our valued and loyal listeners, if they're still listening, they're very loyal. And I want to tell them thank you very much. I want to tell you all that this is as healing for me as hopefully it is for you, maybe more so. And we totally and deeply appreciate your participation in this. You can come and see more about us at our website, which is earth-ems.org. Come and visit us there. Thank you.